All right, let's talk about one of those classic economic ideas that, for whatever reason, always seems to trip people up. The difference between a movement along a demand curve and a shift of the entire curve. It sounds complicated, but I promise we're going to make it super clear. Let's dive in.
So you might be asking, why does this even matter? Well, it's a huge deal, because if you can nail this difference, you can understand why markets act the way they do. It's a puzzle that gets a lot of people. But trust me, by the end of this, you'll see it's actually pretty straightforward.
So let's frame this with a real-world question. Think about it for a second. When your local cinema has a sale, you, personally, are probably more likely to grab a ticket, right? But what happens when a brand new must-have streaming service launches? Suddenly, it feels like everyone is less interested in going to the movies, even if the ticket price hasn't changed one bit. These are two totally different things happening, and we're about to figure out why.
To crack this case, we have to start with our most important tool, our main piece of evidence, the basic demand curve.
So, what is a demand curve? You know, at its heart, it's a really simple picture. It just shows the relationship between two things, how much something costs and how much of it people are willing to buy. It's all based on this core idea called the law of demand, which basically says that when the price of something goes down, people will want to buy more of it. Simple as that.
Okay, let's start our investigation with scenario 1. This is the simple case. We're going to focus only on what happens when a product's price and only its price changes.
And right here, this is the first golden rule. Seriously, if you remember one thing from this section, make it this. A movement along the curve is only ever, always, caused by one single thing. A change in the price of that specific product. That's it. Nothing else.
You know, a great way to picture this is to think of the demand curve as an escalator. The escalator's path is totally fixed, right? It's not moving to a new part of the building. A price change just means you're taking a step up or a step down on that very same escalator.
So let's go back to our cinema tickets. Let's say the price drops from a tenner down to a much more appealing £7. Well, what happens? Because it's cheaper, more people go, yeah, let's go to the movies. On our graph, we see this as a movement down along that fixed curve. And in economics, we have a name for that, an extension of demand.
And of course, it's a two-way street. If the cinema jacks the price back up to £10, a bunch of people are going to say, nah, I'll wait. So fewer tickets get sold. This is a movement up the curve, and we call that a contraction of demand. See, the path, the escalator didn't change, just our position on it.
Okay, so that's what happens when the price changes. Pretty logical, right? But what happens when something else comes along and changes the entire game? Well, that brings us to scenario number 2, the shift.
Now, a shift is a whole different animal. This is what happens when the number of people who want to buy something changes, even if the price hasn't moved an inch. We're not talking about moving along the path anymore. We're talking about the entire path itself picking up and moving somewhere else.
Let's go back to our escalator, because this analogy really works here. A shift isn't about you moving up or down the steps. Oh no. This is like the mall owners literally picking up the entire escalator and moving it to a completely different part of the building. Your basic desire to even get on that escalator has fundamentally changed for reasons that have nothing to do with the price of a single step.
So what has the power to move the entire escalator? Well, there's a whole crew of factors we call the shifters. We're talking about stuff like your income changing, a new fashion trend taking off, or a killer advertising campaign that everyone's talking about. It could even be the price of other things, like substitutes. Think Pepsi and Coke. If Pepsi gets more expensive, the demand for Coke might just shift to the right. Or complements, things you use together, like cars and gas. If gas gets way cheaper, the demand for bigger cars might go up. Okay, it's time to bring it all together. Let's solve that puzzle from the beginning. This is that aha moment where it all clicks.
Here it is, the side-by-side breakdown. On the left, you've got your movement. The cause, a change in price. The result, a change in the quantity demanded. On the right, you've got a shift. The cause, one of those shifter things, a non-price factor. The result, a fundamental change in demand itself at every single price. It's all about what's pulling the strings.
And honestly, the whole secret comes down to the language. Economists are super picky about this for a reason. When you hear a change in quantity demanded, your brain should immediately think movement along the curve caused by price. But when you hear a change in demand, you should think shift of the whole curve caused by something else. That's it. That's the secret code. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory for an exam, though, yeah, you are definitely going to need it for your exams. This is absolutely essential for understanding business news, for companies trying to figure out how to price their products, and for governments trying to understand what's happening in the economy. It's a cornerstone idea that explains so much of the world.
So I'll leave you with a challenge. Now that you know the difference, start looking for it out in the wild. What are those invisible shifters? A new phone, a viral TikTok trend, a change in our lifestyles that are moving the entire demand curve for the things you buy and use every single day. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Thanks for tuning in.